It is so interesting that I just learned today at 44 years old that the Republicans are going to be the ones to save women. The same Republicans that have been saved for women's reproductive acts, or the same Republicans that have stood for the Equal Rights Act, which would hopefully get women to equal pay, or the same Republicans that just this Congress voted for the SAVE Act, which we know would disenfranchise women from even being able to vote. But let me tell you, they are our saviors. And so I am so happy to be here today, because otherwise I would not have an idea that I had a savior in the Republicans. So let's also talk about the fact that it's only been 100 days, 100 long, terrible days for anybody that absolutely believes in reality. Because what we know is that they have terminated staff responsible for enforcing federal protections against sex-based discrimination. Sounds like that's pro-women. Or they've cut funding for domestic violence survivor services. Sounds pro-woman to me. Or they've prohibited funding for research affecting women's health. That definitely sounds pro-women to me. Essentially, they closed the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. Again, sounds like they are fighting for us. And instead of providing oversight over these actions, congressional Republicans have been working to execute one of the most aggressive anti-women legislative agendas in history. And yet, they're here today trying to convince the American people that discriminating against trans people is somehow the only way to protect women. This hearing has nothing to do with improving government efficiency. It's another attempt by Republicans to distract from their demonic and disastrous policies that are making it more difficult for Americans to make ends meet. So, Ms. Goss-Graves, I want to play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Got it.
Okay, very good. The first one, gutted medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, AKA deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
Encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. This committee could be engaged in actual oversight of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. So let's talk about waste. Like Trump's plan to spend almost $100 million for his little birthday parade, or how he spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. In fact, it's a little bit over $30 million at our last estimation. In fact, President Trump is on pace to spend more than $1 billion of taxpayer dollars just on golfing. Yet the Republicans have been silent. So they must think spending taxpayer dollars on the president's golfing trips is more important than providing health care to their constituents. And when I talk about constituents, we're going to talk about the ones on this committee. So if we look at Texas 26, 39,000 children look to potentially lose their Medicaid with the cuts that they are about to vote on for reconciliation. 88,000 in Georgia 3, 68,000 in Missouri 7, 79,000 in Tennessee 2, 86,000 in South Carolina 4, 50,000 in Texas 04, 85,000 in Texas 27, and in Georgia 14, 111,000. And if you add that up just on this committee, we have 606,000 kids that are relying on us to do right by them. And instead, we playing these crazy games because we worried about 10 trans folk that are in sports right now in college. I wasn't elected to be engaged in these fights. I was elected to make sure that those kids, the kids that they are about to neglect with these terrible votes that they're about to take, I was elected to protect them and to make sure that they could grow up and have all the opportunities. But let's keep on track. Now, when we look at how much they are spending on, let's look at fraud. We could investigate whether the White House and the members of this subcommittee engaged in insider trading and market manipulation. Maybe it's a coincidence that the chairwoman brought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock the day before Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs. But I guess we'll never know. So finally, let's talk about abuse. Like how the Republicans have let Elon steal data of Americans and his competitors to make himself even richer. Look, don't let these hearings distract you from their destruction. This is rage baiting instead of conducting oversight over the issues that Americans actually care about. And with that, I will yield.
I think my congresswoman from Texas was just in that ass. Let me put on my Savannah State shades. I must say, Derek, she broke that thing down, and all three of them just had the Trump folk just running today.
Roland, this is the fight we need to do all the time. We need to check these Republicans. My question is, to all the Republicans who are under the sound of my voice that's watching Roland Martin's show, where is the waste, fraud, and abuse? Because that's the purpose of this illegal, unsanctioned agency they call Department of Government Efficiency. Where's the DOGE has yet to find any efficiency, Roland? Because if they would have identified some waste, fraud, and abuse, they would have put it on Front Street. They would have said the lack of resources here or ineffective management there. The only thing DOGE has identified, Roland, is the inefficiency of Trump and Musk. Period. I mean, they said DOGE is going to help us stimulate economic growth. That's wrong because it's quite the opposite. DOGE is going to help us improve public services. Wrong again, because they negatively impact our healthcare, our education, our transportation, and everything else under the federal government. They said DOGE is going to help us increase public trust and transparency. Well, we would love to see that, because Marjorie got $283,000. They said DOGE is going to help reduce corruption. And we see corruption every weekend down in Mar-a-Lago. He said DOGE is going to help us do cost saving, enhance innovation, improve the environment, stability, and social equity. DOGE continued to demonstrate that the swamp was brought in over 100 days ago.
If you're going to swing, Joy, swing.
But you best not miss when it comes to Jasmine Crockett. And frankly, any of, our congressional representatives that you saw in those exchanges, no matter what their style is, we saw, a calmer style in some of the early representatives, and then we got all the brilliant fire in the end. And she was going up against my good friend Fatima Goss-Graves, who was also prepared. Her testimony was great. If you are so inclined, I hope you to go back and listen to the substantive part of the testimony being provided, to just remind you of how ridiculous it is that their obsession with trans people allows us to spend precious time worrying about attacking and then forcing people into a posture of having to defend not only trans people, but this is sliding scale. Their focus on trans people is because they want to do more on gender and they want to do more on women. White women, pay attention. Any of the focus on trans people is about rolling back the protections that are around gender. And they wouldn't be doing all this for trans people. There are not enough of them. They're doing it because they're laying the legal groundwork to get you. They want to get you back in the house. They want to make it more difficult for you to work. What they have not done, Jasmine Crockett already talked about what they are doing to harm women, but what they have not done was actually advance the causes of women. Paid leave, equal pay, affordable child care, and equal rights amendment. None of that. Haven't heard any proactive policies about that. These people are fraudulent. They are not focused on the things that you think they're focused on, but it also serves the groundwork for what they really want, which is a rollback of advancements for women of all races and of people of color. Be prepared for it.
Daniel?
I mean, how do I go after Joy? I mean, she pretty much just said exactly what needed to be said. And then, to add as a caveat, we see the current president wanting to give $5,000 or fine $5,000 for women to stay home and have babies. I mean, I think that it's important that we recognize that this is not something that is done systematically just over the last 3 or 4 months. This is a plan that has taken place for a long time. Look, I'll go as far, and some people may not like this, but in 1933, prior to the to World War II, a part of Nazi Germany's strategy was to completely dismantle education, social structures, women's rights. I mean, these are all areas that we can reflect on over a historic past that is still recorded. They can ban as many books as we want, but history itself has shown us that the same playbook that we're seeing today by disenfranchising women, taking money away from the mental health of our children. Look, since COVID, all the way to where we are today, we have seen so many attacks against children and their ability to survive. And I want to go back really, really quickly to what the sister said earlier from the veterans group. Look, there are 133 suicides per day, and 17 of those are veterans. But the fastest growing groups of suicide is our children. And so we have to understand that whether it's an attack against our women, our children's education, or anything that we've talked about over the last hour and a half, we have to understand that this is a part of a bigger picture to disenfranchise the vote, disenfranchise our society, and quite frankly, break down our current democracy, which is imperfect, to build something much worse.
Well, we see exactly what's going on. And again, if you're going to sit here and swing, you swing. I was trying to find this clip on which one of my phones I had it on. There was this great scene from the movie Double Take, Orlando Jones, Eddie Griffin. And Orlando Jones said, "You campaigning for an ass whooping and you about to get elected."
Yeah.
I love that line.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
I'll be right back.